All right, today's the day. It's Monday, and we are going to attempt to record an entire EP in 1 week, which for some of you might not sound like a lot, but for me, I feel like it's a lot, but I think we can do it. Um, so, this is the studio setup. I thought we'd kind of start by just giving a quick little tour. Um, I had this idea, kind of this crazy random idea that popped into my head. I could see this exact setup. Um, for those of you that don't know, this is my studio here. You can kind of see, but what we did was basically we built a studio within a studio, right? Um, just a little background on this project and what I wanted to do. Essentially, I had the idea of recording like covers of worship songs that have meant a lot to me over the years. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a worship leader, a music producer, mixing engineer, and I've been leading worship for about 15 years. And so basically, the idea was let me put a small collection of songs together um, that that have meant a lot to me over the years, and let's try to record it in 1 week. And so today is day one. Um, this is my little setup here. Just a super quick tour. Got the Soyuz 017, which has quickly become one of my favorite mics in the entire world. Definitely the best sounding mic that I've ever owned. So that's awesome. Got my trusty Nord here, which is actually just acting as a controller. Um, I've got just a MIDI output going actually over here to the Juno. And then the Juno is USB to the computer, just running like a keyscape upright sound for piano. Um, but something pretty cool, if you look over here, I've got this vintage Tascam console that I've actually had for years. And turn it on there. This thing is a monster. Um, this thing, I recently had it restored, and it sounds incredible. For all of you audio nerds out there, it's got kind of like a real dark, warm, punchy sound, kind of somewhere between like a Neve and an API kind of vibe, but uniquely its own thing. And so, really, one of the other goals of all of this sonically was create a small little setup in the middle of the room, run everything into the console, and kind of get that cohesive like console sound since everything's running through the same equipment, same preamps. Got a little drum kit set up over here. Got is it the Beta 92A on the inside of the kick? Um, and then just 57s on the snare and floor tom. Super, super simple setup, which I actually really enjoy because it kind of limits, obviously what I'm able to do. Um, but creatively, I think it makes you lean in a little bit more to like what's really necessary versus just a really massive drum kit. Um, got the Cascade stereo ribbon mic here as the overhead, which I love using stereo ribbons as overheads. They're just super warm and punchy. Captures the full kit really well and don't have to worry about phase and stuff like that. Got a Vox AC30 over here, which we'll get to eventually. And then got this guy, this Orange Tiny Terror, which is a super, super fun amp. Honestly, it's kind of become one of my favorite amps of all times. Just running it into a speaker cab there. I think it's a Jackson speaker cab. Um, yeah, and so basically what my plan is, of course, got the keys set up over here. Got the Juno X, and I will be using analog sounds, like running the Juno into the Tascam. So just to get some like super nice warm like vintage synth tones. I'll also use it as a controller to dial in some like software sounds where needed. Then I got the Rhodes here, the 73. Got this running direct in, also through the Tascam, and then I've got a little setup on here if you can see it, where I've got, because it's running in mono, so I've got a little stereo delay on there. and then some verb. And then I actually have the option of doing like a tremolo, kind of stereo tremolo. So adding some width there to the Rhodes. I don't plan on using it on every song. Um, my goal sonically, as I'm just kind of thinking through all of this, my goal is to keep it relatively simple, right? Um, it's fun, of course, like using all kinds of crazy big production sounds and software and all that type of stuff. But the goal of creating this little mini setup was to try to do something musically and creatively that would really inspire me to just use what's around me. Um, I am going to record electric guitar, so I'll record kind of like a stereo lead part. But I'm honestly even thinking about not recording. We'll see what happens when we get to it, but thinking about not recording like rhythm electric guitar, but more so just keeping it lead and then allowing some of the other instruments to kind of take um, that rhythm place in the mix. I don't want to give away too many secrets because I do have some tricks up my sleeve with bass and with acoustic to help kind of fill things out. But the goal is to keep things relatively simple and sparse so that the mix just feels really big and wide open and doesn't feel, just like cluttered. And I love the big worship anthemy sound, but I don't think that's the goal here. It's somewhere between acoustic, maybe not quite folk, but somewhere between acoustic and just like a solid studio recording. It will feel big, but I don't want to like use the crutch of just reverbing everything out and massive 4 or 5 tracks of guitars. Like I really want to try to keep things simple because the other side of it is I'm playing everything myself. And for those of you watching, like I promise I do have friends. I actually have some amazing musician friends that offered to play and be a part of this. And honestly, I might do that at some point. But I wanted to kind of just even as just a challenge for myself, I wanted to try to do all of this by myself in my own little studio setup, just surrounded by my own instruments, my own creativity. And maybe that sounds wrong. Hopefully, hopefully my heart is communicated in that. I love to collaborate. I love to, work with other musicians. But um, I don't know. These are also songs that I've led worship to for years, so I'm very familiar with them. And I wanted to just kind of dive in and just try to see what happens creatively for me by just going after it, um, and kind of writing my own parts to the songs. Obviously the parts will follow the roadmap of the songs for the most part, but yeah, just kind of putting my own creative spin on it. Got my brand new Guild acoustic, kind of a vintage Gibson like LG series kind of vibe. Really nice, sweet sounding acoustic. I'm gonna try to track everything with just it as far as acoustic goes. I do have a Martin HD28, which is absolutely amazing, and it's sitting over there in case I need it. But I wanted to just lean into that sound as well. Again, not just a massive acoustic sound, but kind of like a sweet, punchy mid-range kind of vibe. Yeah, and just see what tones we can get from that. So, anyway, I'm gonna get started here in a second. I think what I'm gonna do. I woke up at like 5:20 this morning, just thinking about how I wanted to do this. And so essentially, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to start on the keys. If any of you have seen my other YouTube stuff where I just lead worship from the keys and do these long worship sets, this will be a similar heart, except I am going to kind of break it down per song, because again, I want to produce like nice, warm, organic versions of each one of these songs. Some of which are older songs that are very much like sung on a weekly basis in churches around the world, and then maybe some are a little lesser known but have been important to me over the years. But I didn't want to just do like one solid set and flow all the way through it. I wanted to take the time to build out the songs and lean into the production and creative side as well. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the keys, and I'm going to basically track like piano and vocals. I plan on using those vocals and even the piano as like the final vocal take, even if I have to do a couple takes to get there. Because what I want to do, I've got, this other camera set up over here where essentially I'm going to have, this angle on the piano, and then I'll basically do, um, today. We'll see how much I get done today, but my plan is to like record vocals and piano and essentially build out the arrangement of the songs. But that way I can flow, and if I might throw in like a tag on a song or something like that, but kind of create the arrangement in real time and what feels right. Probably following the roadmap of the songs to some degree, but also, of course, like I just want to lean into Holy Spirit and what He's doing in my heart in the moment, what He's saying. And so that way, if I start with this, basically I can kind of map out the songs as I lead them, as I sing them. And then what I'll do from there is I'll probably jump on the drums. I'll move the cameras around and have to probably move a couple of things like microphone wise. I'll start on the drums over there, and essentially, play to what I just recorded on the keys, for each song. So I will stop between each song and, kind of adjust for what the vibe of each song is. But basically, build the dynamic section. This is also kind of how I like to produce other projects. Well, I'll kind of get a roadmap with like scratch tracks, whether it's scratch acoustic or keys, and then I'll move on to drums and bass. So from there, after drums, I'll probably do, obviously it's a very simple kit setup. One of my favorite things to do when I have, like a simple drum kit setup, is to not rely too heavy on like the playing, but to also add in some, like extra percussion elements and stuff like that. So I don't have to play like super busy on the kit, to try to fill up space since it's kind of a smaller setup. What I'll do is track like, fundamental beat stuff, and then go back, even with like rim clicks and, different tom parts and things like that, maybe even some cymbal swells, and kind of track like separate, percussion elements, shaker, tambourine, stuff like that. And then even get creative. Like I've done random things like get brushes and, you know, like hit brushes on tables and suitcases and things like that in order to kind of, add some like wide percussion stuff to blend in with the drums. So it just feels like there's kind of rhythm happening all around you. So anyway, so I'll move from there, over to bass. I'll track some bass. My plan is to go DI bass through this little guy down here, if you can see it. That is the Soyuz Launcher Deluxe. The Soyuz Launcher Deluxe, I do have it plugged into the Tascam. And so essentially I'll be DI bass into the Soyuz, which just adds some nice like transformer color and like some warmth. And then I'll also hit the Tascam. One of the cool things about the Tascam as well, if you can see, it's got these really cool EQs on it where they're very simple. They're like just shelf EQs. You can select. I hope you can see this. This is not the most formal video, by the way. But yeah, you can see it's got like a 10K shelf or 3K selectable shelf where you can just add in some nice like, real silky, nice top end. But then it's also got like 75 hertz or 200 hertz to add in some warmth. You can obviously also cut if you wanted to, so you could kind of use like the 75 hertz, almost like a low cut. There isn't an actual, like low cut on the console, so sometimes I'll just roll off a little bit of lows at that 75 hertz, and it kind of does the same thing. Not as extreme as like an actual filter, but it does roll off and thin up the sound just a little bit. So anyway, I'll start on bass. After that, I do have a trick where I guess I'll just go ahead and tell you, because I started doing this recently and think it's pretty cool. But um, I'll actually track like a standard kind of normal bass tone, like DI, but then I've been going through and, like plugging into this orange Tiny Terror with the bass. It's not a bass amp, um, but I kind of like that because what it does, I'll actually gain it up quite a bit and get a really nice like distorted bass tone, but it still has, um, it has less lows in it naturally. And then I'll mic the cab, and then this is kind of crazy, but I'll actually double track the bass, um, for like really for just like big choruses and things like that. Not necessarily through the whole song because it'd be a little extreme, but I'll double track the bass, pan it hard left and right, and then essentially push the low mid some. Um, and like I said, that kind of has been taking the place of like rhythm electric for me. Again, I might end up recording some rhythm electric. I don't want to say I'm not going to do it if it makes sense on the song. But what I do like about double tracking the bass is it just gives this real low, real nice distorted wide sound, that when blended with the normal DI bass, it just sounds really full and really tight, but also wide. Um, and I don't know, it helps. There's a bass trick that a lot of mixing engineers will do where they'll send bass to like a chorus and just kind of get like a wide distorted bass sound. It's kind of the same thing, but by double tracking it, it's just like as wide as it can possibly get. So anyway, moving over here, I've got this is the recording setup. I've got back here, if you can see it, I've got an Apollo, with just the console. You can't really see it, but the console, the Tascam console is running straight into the line inputs of the Apollo. It's the Apollo X8, and like as of right now, I'm not using any of the preamps on the Apollo. It's all strictly the Tascam. Going into Logic, Logic is not my usual DAW that I use. A lot of times I'll use Universal Audio Luna, because I just like the way that it sounds. I grew up on Pro Tools. I think I started with like Pro Tools 7. And so I used Pro Tools for a long, long time. And I'm very familiar with Logic, but for this project, I wanted to use Logic just because there's a lot of built in little sounds like, I don't know if you can see here, but I've got like a drum machine sound on there that I'm probably going to use to just add some extra percussion and things like that. Just some sweet little, reverbed out hits and things just to add some dimension. And Logic just has so much of that kind of stuff built into it naturally. Um, you don't have to have a ton of extra software libraries and stuff. And I do have a lot of software libraries, but one of the things I did not want to do for this project is spend a bunch of time, sorting through tons and tons of software and samples and loops and stuff like that. I wanted to be able to create very quickly because again, the goal, I've got I think 5 songs on my list of what I want to attempt to record this week. And so what I'm going to do is, like I said, start with vocals and keys, and then basically build out the arrangements of the songs. Um, Hop on the drums and build out the dynamics on the bass, and obviously just chord structure. Then probably acoustic, and just get that nice rhythmic, like wide double tracked acoustic sound. And then from there, I'll either track electrics or lean into the keys a little bit more and do, like some nice like poly synth stuff on the Juno, and maybe add a little bit of, texture with the Rhodes, and yeah, just kind of build it as I go, but really leaning into what's in front of me so I can work quickly. And so today is day one. We're gonna see what all gets accomplished today, but I'm excited to anybody that's watching. I'm excited to have you here and kind of go on this journey with me. It was kind of a risk because I've never done this before with like a deadline of 1 week. I'm hoping and praying that it actually ends up being where I get like a lot more stuff done today. Like it'd be super awesome to get the whole thing done today. Just keeping everything simple, and then it's like, all right, well, I've got the rest of the week to edit or add any extra little elements that I want to add, yeah, and so that's the plan. So thank you for watching. We're gonna get started here in a minute, um, and yeah, and I'll just kind of take you along on this journey with me, and we'll see what happens. So be sure to, watch the next video here in just a second to see the tracking process for, keys and vocals.